Hello, everyone. This is Joris with Unpeeling the 3D Printing News with 3dprint.com. We've got a couple of news items for you today. With 4 stories in total, and this news roundup of the most important 3D printing stories of today. The 4th story is Lithopines and Tactile Data for the Blind. This comes to us via Science Advances. It's a research paper by Baylor University. It starts off with something that we may have not have realized, but it's of course a huge problem. If you're a blind researcher or scientist, scientific papers are very, very difficult for you to read, especially the data chart kind of visual representations of data element. So what they're doing here is they're creating a tactile data format, essentially, to let blind people read data out with their hands. What they then also do is they make that data into a lithopane, which is something that kind of lets through light selectively to make an image, so that you can read it out if you can see as well. So you have this one physical representation of data that you can read out either through looking at the light or through touching it. And what they found so far is that there's a 79% accuracy, greater than 79% accuracy on the interpretation of the data, what the numbers are. So seems quite high, but again, at the same time seems quite low. It's one of those numbers where you're like, But this is a really wonderful thing. I think we don't really realize just how many opportunities there are in assistive devices and things for handicapped people and things for people who have some kind of issue. And being able to make a personalized solution for that group of people or that individual. There's a lot of opportunity for us there in 3D printing. Now, on top of that, there's an awful lot of opportunities for us in looking at these kind of universal data and data representation paths as well. So I thought this was an elegant, nice little piece of research to bring to you guys. Third news story is Texas A&M is making inks that mimic the native characteristics of highly conductive human tissue. This is a piece of research that comes us from the Texas A&M blog. It's a 2D nanomaterial known as molybdenum or something like that, disulfide, and then it's modified with gelatin. And the gelatin turns it into a flexible hydrogel. They say that this new hydrogel ink is biocompatible, electrically conductive, and what they hope to make with this wearable and implantable bioelectronics, which can be printed in a non-planar way as well. And I like this probably the most of this actually is it can be done with a really cheap system, like off the shelf 3D printer or a really inexpensive 3D printer. The things they have envisioned for this material is things like continuous monitoring of the body, things like strain sensors on muscles or other systems. And one of the things that they think about is 3D printing electronic tattoos for Parkinson disease patients. The idea then is that the e-tattoo, as it was called, can monitor movements and tremors and the severity of these tremors. So clearly this is an area that can really be exploited much more effectively and in a much more significant way than we're seeing. Just this market of sensors on or in the body could be a potentially very vast one. So this is a nice piece of research by Texas A&M, and also in looking at in different ways of obtaining circuits and conductive inks and making them accessible to many people rather than requiring really high-end printers is also a very wonderful thing, I think. The second piece of news is optimal settings for all 3D printers through machine learning. Now, this comes to us from Science Daily. This is a project by Cambridge University, and you may have thought, wait a minute, didn't I recently see something very, very similar? Yes, you did. There was an MIT C-Sail project that came out, which was pretty much the same thing. So your main takeaway is here. One of the main takeaways here is that there is an IP land grab going on between universities about patents or future patents on how to use machine learning, AI, these kind of systems to come up with the optimal settings for 3D printing. Now, having said that, this is still a really wonderfully, very, very positive development for us because there are huge problems with finding the correct settings, finding the correct settings for like FDM printers, but also powder bed fusion, also powder bed fusion for metals, qualifying parts. All of this stuff is really retarding our progress. So anything that speeds us up is wonderful. So what the approach that the Cambridge team took was that they wanted to work for all different types of printers, for all different types of materials, right? So they're saying, okay, we're going to put a deep. What they did is they did a deep learning computer vision model. They put this about the on this challenge, and they showed it 950,000 images that were automatically captured of the building of 192 different 3D printed objects. Um, and every single time, the algorithm was also fed the settings of the machine and told what is a successful print or not. The settings were the ones that you would expect, things like flow rate, speed, temperature, that kind of thing. And then by itself, this thing figured out the setting. Now, the idea is that it wouldn't only figure out the settings for that Prusa printer or with that PETG material, whatever, but for everything. So they fed it all sorts of exotic materials and came up with really positive conclusions as well. So that is a very, very hopeful thing, I think, for all of us, because it could really, reduce one of the biggest headaches that we have, and it could save us a ton of time in dialing in new materials and new things. And it's nice to see a lot of universities work on that, and we've been talking about this before, that we really haven't seen a lot of software try to solve 3D printing's core problems. Yes, we have Slicer and slicers and software that lets us do it, but there's no real huge optimization leap forward. There hasn't been in the last 10 years or so. Huge leap forward in our capabilities through software. So this could be a way to see this happening. The number one piece of news comes to us from TCT. It's a 3D printed cornea from human tissue developed. Now, worldwide, there's over 1.5 million cases of corneal damage from either disease or trauma. And the LV Prasad Eye Institute, the Indian Institute of Technology, Hyderabad, and the Center for Cellular Molecular Biology have worked on a solution for this. And what they're doing is 3D printed corneal tissue from human donor corneal tissue. They're very proud of this because it's a total Indian project by Indian clinicians and scientists developed in the country itself. So that's a very great achievement for them. Apart from that, it's a cornea implant, and that is one of the things that a lot of teams worldwide are working on, and it's a very, very exciting thing going forward for lots of different patients worldwide. Now, one thing that might seem as a limitation, which led them to try this solution, is very interesting. Now, in other countries, people are working on using like pigs' eyes and other animal eyes as donors for this. And in India, this is like leads to some sensitivities for particular animals or just animal tissue and eyes in general. So they didn't have that option. For them, this was the only way to go. And then in this case, it led to this great breakthrough. What are they doing? They are taking cornea tissue from humans. Now, the cool thing is that it's cornea tissue that is not normally suitable for implantation. So this is tissue that they harvest, and then they conclude that it's not good enough, so then they have to discard it. So they're taking that tissue. They're putting the decellularized corneal tissue matrix and the stem cells into to creating a hydrogel, and this is then 3D printed, and then it leads apparently to good as new cornea. Wonderful approach, very similar to what all these people are trying to do with the animal tissue and other systems or the organ systems. So generally, very, very good development. And for their specific situation, it's very exciting because it doesn't have animal tissue in it. But just generally, this is really exciting because this could be a huge treatment option for many people around the world. And yeah, this is a big step forward. We, of course, don't know how long this is away from clinical approval, how long this is away from actually improving people's lives. But just generally, I think we can all agree this is a huge step forward of these players. And it's nice to see, advances in 3D printing coming from not from Germany and the United States, but to see them coming from other countries as well. That's very exciting for the future. If we could have many, many centers worldwide developing a lot of 3D printed innovation. And thank you so much for your time today. I'm glad to hear everybody's feedback. I'm glad that everybody's enjoying this, and thank you so much for listening to the live streams. Thanks.